Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated. It truly is. Before we get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so because it really helps me out and I really appreciate it. I struggled a lot to find the words for an introduction to this video, and I failed at it miserably. Mostly because there are just no words that will even remotely do justice for the horrific things that took place at the home of Claire Nichols. So, I'm going to introduce you to the key players of the story instead. The victim, 35-year-old Andrew Gardner. His spouse, Claire Nichols, Claire's brother, 24-year-old Simon Nichols, and Claire's lover, who incidentally was her mother's lover before he moved on to Claire, 44-year-old Stephen Martin, Claire's new boyfriend slash ex-stepfather. Yeah, you heard that right. One last thing. It was pretty much next to impossible to find a lot of information on this case, but it was even harder to find photos of this story, minus the ones that I've already shown you pretty much. Unfortunately, it just wasn't available. I honestly considered walking away from this story, but after hearing the details, I had to speak on it. And with that, let's just start. 28-year-old Claire Nichols was a single mother of three when she met 35-year-old Andrew Gardner. She had two girls aged 9 and 5 and a son aged 7. She was described as incredibly controlling, and it said that she would fly off the handle over the simplest things, like looking in her direction the wrong way. Her parents split when she was just a teenager, but Claire also left the family home when she was just 15 years old. It is said, and it's also important to note, that Claire did grow up in a very abusive home, and she watched a lot of DV between her parents, which means that her brother also would have seen abuse. A brother that played an incredibly large role in the death of Andrew Gardner. Maybe the divorce played a part, but that hasn't been confirmed. After she left the family home, she went to live with a man by the name of Malcolm for about 2 years before bouncing around from job to job and house to house. She would go on to meet the father of her 3 children when she was just 18 years old and working at a charity shop. The father was 46-year-old John Patterson. John was an ex-Navy radar operator, so pretty impressive job, right? But he was also a convicted pedo. So there's that. Social services would eventually reach out to Claire and tell her that if she did not leave John Peterson, her children would be taken away from her. So what does Claire do? Well, she didn't take her children away from the pedo. She instead moved up north with Peterson to avoid social services. John says that during the relationship with Claire, she was incredibly controlling. So much so that he wasn't even allowed to go to the store without getting Claire's permission first. And if he did, she would fly off the handle and go nuts on him. You're going to see this pattern repeat a lot. After several years of this, John finally had had enough. He called social services and told them himself that he fears for his children's safety. But because, and this is so crazy, because John is a convicted pedo, social services did not take him seriously. Which is crazy, because what does it matter if he's a convicted pedo or not? What matters is that he's calling you. So why aren't we taking every call seriously? Regardless of who it's coming from, take every call seriously. That's just my personal opinion. John Peterson would later testify against Claire in court, calling her a she-devil and saying, "She beat and battered me all the years I was with her, 4 or 5 times a week. She was horrible. She would flip all the time. She'd throw her shoes, punch me, and verbally me for the least things. If I went to the store, she'd attack me. If I went to do the gardening, she'd do the same. After all this, John and Claire end the relationship, and Claire leaves with her 3 children. But she won't be alone for long because she starts dating 44-year-old Steve Martin. Yes, the ex-stepfather. So they date, break up, get back together, but we're not there yet. Steve has an incredibly low IQ of 59, which is in the bottom 1% of the population. She would go on to date Stephen for about 2 years before she hooks up with 35-year-old Andrew Gardner in 2005. Andrew was born in 1974 in Northeast England and has 2 brothers. He also suffers from learning disabilities and has been declared special needs. Andrew and his family are very, very close, right up until the point that he met Claire Nichols. Claire and Andrew actually met while Andrew was signing up for a course for individuals with learning disabilities at the job center. He's described as quiet and polite with a kind heart. Andrew would become somewhat of a surrogate father to the 3 children that Claire had with the pedo, and the couple would go on to have a child together, a baby girl. Andrew absolutely loved this little girl, and it's very strongly believed that the baby was the only reason that he stayed around and endured all the abuse and suffering that he did for all those years. I think he feared that if he left, he would never see his baby girl again. And Claire already took the other 3 children away from their father, so what would stop her from doing it again? Really nothing. Why should Andrew assume that he's any different? Tragically, the baby girl that he fought so hard for would only know her daddy for about a year before Andrew's body had just given up his fight. Claire, Andrew, Claire's brother Simon, who was about 19 years old at this time, and all 4 of the children will move into this home together at 14 Arthur Street in Chilton. And although the majority of the beatings were mostly reserved for Andrew, Claire would think nothing of beating her brother, who also suffered from low intelligence, another pattern that you see, over things as simple as like not cleaning up the proper way. Because it's said that Claire keeps a very incredibly tidy home. Almost scary tidy, considering that she has 4 small children living there. I have a teen and a preteen, and I can't even keep a house that clean. While living at the home on Arthur Street, Claire cuts Andrew off from all of his family. The last time he saw his parents was in 2006, when he showed up at their door looking malnourished and beaten. He asked them for some food and some money, and they obviously gave it to him because his parents loved him. And he came from a really good family. They begged him to stay, but he refused. And again, I think it's because of the baby. He looked malnourished because Claire refused to allow him to eat the food in his own home. And if he did try to steal food in his own home, she would beat him. She would weigh and count all of the food to make sure that none of it was taken without permission, and she would cut holes in the pockets of his jeans to ensure that he wasn't able to hide food that he would later consume. Meanwhile, who has time to do that shit? Like, I feel like I barely have time to breathe. Who has time to do that shit? During family dinners, Andrew would be forced to sit there and watch everybody eat. And Claire's son would also speak about this during his testimony at the trial. Claire would encourage her children to participate in the torture of Andrew. She would even have them carve tic-tac-toe boards on his back like he was a human game board. Really, like, get a pen and paper, bitch. What are we doing here? But it wasn't just the physical, though. He also suffered verbal and mental abuse. Claire would tell Andrew that he was useless, worthless, a drain on the finances, and completely disposable. She would also invite her ex-lover, Steve Martin, who's mom's ex-lover of 7 years, to come and live with them. And her and Stephen would have sex right in front of a dying Andrew Gardner. Twist it. Andrew's family didn't even know that they had a grandchild until after Andrew was already dead. Yeah. Can you imagine? Because he was never allowed to leave the home. So much so that neighbors didn't even know he was living there. And the homes are incredibly close together. Like, look at them. If you look at them, they're like, the homes are on this street are just kind of in a row. So we're not even talking like there's a lot of space in between the homes, or you could be like, all right, yeah, but there's a lot of, no, there's no space in between the homes. So the fact that the neighbors were unaware that Andrew was even living there should speak volumes of what his captivity was truly like. Andrew's parents didn't even know that he was dead until there was a knock on the door from police, okay? But they saw the news broadcast. So they saw the news broadcast that there was a body found in Chilton, and that a man had died. But at this time, they didn't even know that their son was living in Chilton. Therefore, they didn't know that the broadcast they were watching was about their son. Can you imagine that? Like, that's sick. He was whipped with wet tea towels, and he had been cut on his leg so deep that his tendons were exposed. In March of 2009, Claire begins to jump on Andrew with her knees, causing severe fractures to his ribs and internal injuries. This was a very slow and a very painful death that Claire not only had her children watch, but she had her children participate in. And I don't even think Hollywood could come up with a movie like this. It's sick. March 12, 2009, Andrew would finally suffer his last blows from Claire, and his body would finally give out. His autopsy would take 7 hours to complete because of all of his injuries. Over 150 separate injuries that included numerous fractures, bleeding on the brain, knife slashes, burns, bruises, scars, blood poisoning. He was 35 years old, 5'9" at the time of his death, and weighed about 130 pounds from being starved so badly. Claire Nichols, Simon Nichols, and Stephen Martin were all arrested and charged with his murder. Both Simon and Stephen spoke almost immediately and blamed everything on Claire. Claire continues to claim her innocence. Why are we surprised about this? We should not be surprised about this. She is pure evil. This woman is pure evil. During the trial, the prosecution did not hold back. Mr. Salone says, "You accept that you told a pack of lies from the beginning to end in all the police interviews in both March and July. Pretending Andrew had left the house at 8 p.m., pretending he had been assaulted while he was out, returning to the house about 11 p.m. Complete pack of lies, pretending the assault occurred away from the house and others must have been responsible." Simon Nichols called 999 at 11:27 p.m. on March 13, 2009. He claimed that Andrew had come home saying that he was attacked, telling police that Andrew left the house at 8:30 that evening before returning home sometime after 11 p.m., complaining that he had been assaulted. Steve Martin says he and Simon were on the couch watching television when Andrew arrived home, going on to state that Claire was upstairs in his bedroom waiting for his return. When paramedics arrived on the scene, they saw Andrew laying on the living room floor on top of newspapers, only wearing a pair of shorts. The reason for the newspapers was so that he didn't ruin the furniture or rug with his blood, because remember, Claire keeps an incredibly tidy home. He was not breathing, he had no pulse, and his body was stiff, indicating that he had been dead for quite a few hours. much longer than the 30 minutes that was originally told to the paramedics. The truth of the matter, according to the medical examiner, is that Andrew had been severely and repeatedly beaten, burnt, and tortured over a period of weeks. He suffered 21 separate rib fractures. The rib fractures were the type that is normally seen at the severe end of the spectrum. Fractures seen in a severe car crash or falls from somewhere incredibly high. The only reasonable explanation for the rib fractures is that Andrew was repeatedly and forcibly jumped on with feet or knees as he lay on the floor. On that occasion, during the final attack, Andrew was pinned to the floor by Simon and Stephen. Simon had hold of his arms, and Stephen was pinning him down as well as punching him. It was during the attack that you stomped on his already burnt foot, fracturing him. Burn on his foot. Okay, that occurred from them putting Andrew in a bathtub and pouring boiling hot water over his feet and his legs. At the time of the attack, he was already suffering from 21 rib fractures, and it was obvious that he was in need of urgent medical attention. Your intention in carrying out that attack was to cause him serious bodily injury. Claire replies, I do know one thing, that I never wanted to see that man die. You still can't bring yourself to admit the true extent of what you did that night. You can't bring yourself to admit what your intention was, because if you did, you would be admitting murder. I did not intend serious harm. He already had 6 rib fractures. He is then attacked again, the attack causing another 10 rib fractures. So, when he was being jumped on, already having rib fractures, he must have been in excruciating pain. I admit to jumping on him on one occasion. The rest of his broken ribs would have been caused by my brother Simon. I did not realize that my knee going into his ribs was going to cause him so much pain. What the fuck did you think it was gonna do, bitch? What the fuck did you think it was gonna do? Did you think it was gonna be pleasant? I don't understand this woman. Claire Nichols also subjected Andrew to utter humiliation when she would have sex with her boyfriend, Steve Martin, in front of Andrew while he's slowly dying. Mr. Sloan then brings up the fact that Claire would encourage her 3 older children to participate in the abuse of Andrew. You even corrupted your own children. They took their lead from you. Not only were they encouraged to assault Andrew, but they were also given approval by you. They scratched him with keys as well. They hit him, punched him, and kicked him, following your lead, and you did nothing to stop them. So Simon Nichols' lawyer also has a chance to question Claire, saying, you really have no regard for anybody but yourself, do you? You're prepared to say anything about anybody if you think it helps you. I am telling the truth today because it's the truth. I was frightened at the beginning, and that's why I could not tell the truth. Today I knew I had to and wanted to. Because your brother dared to be disloyal in his interviews, you are trying to drag him down with you. Claire would go on to blame her new boyfriend, who's her mother's ex-boyfriend, for the majority of the abuse. Things that included pouring the boiling water on him, branding him with the lighter, pinning him up against a hot radiator, scratching him with the keys, and hitting him. Even though her kids admitted to scratching him with the keys. Claire Nichols was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 32 years. Simon Nichols was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years. And Steve Martin was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years. All 3 of them have appealed their sentences, and all 3 appeals were rejected. If you guys are still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet and you feel so inclined to, because it really helps me out, and I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe out there.